Welcome to Prajim Technologies. I am Venkat. This is part 86 of ASP.NET video series. In this session, we will discuss about the effects of turning impersonation on with anonymous access. In part 85 of this video series, we discussed that IIS provides anonymous access to resources on the server using IUSR account. But once the request is handed over to ASP.NET, the application code is actually executed using the application pool identity. In this session, we will discuss about what impersonation is, how to turn impersonation on, and what are the effects of turning impersonation on with anonymous access. Let's understand that with an example. Let's flip to Visual Studio. I have an ASP.NET web application project with name web application 1. It has got this web form 1.aspx on which I have a grid view control and a button control. Within the page load event, this is the same piece of code that we discussed in part 85 of this video series. This line basically prints out the name of the account that's used to execute the application code. This line here tells whether the user is authenticated or not, and this line tells the authentication type that we are using if the user is authenticated, and the name of the authenticated user. Okay, so it's the same piece of code that we discussed about in part 85. Okay, and then when the user clicks this button, within the button click event, what are we doing? We are creating a dataset object and we are reading this XML data. So in C:\data folder, I have an XML file called countries.xml. So we are basically reading that XML data into this data set, which in turn is used as the data source for the grid view control, and we are calling data bind. So very simple application. Now this application is deployed to IIS. So within IIS, I have an application called web application 1. Now this web application 1, if I right click on that and if I go to manage application and advanced settings, if you look at the properties here, this web application 1 is associated with C:\web application 1 web application 1. That's our web application 1, and this application is actually present in a default app pool. Okay, and if you look at the authentication for this application, anonymous authentication is enabled. Okay, so as you might expect, if I go ahead and run this now, since anonymous authentication is enabled, I will be able to access this one. And then once the request is handed over to ASP.NET, the application code is actually executed using default app pool. That's the application pool identity. And is user authenticated? No, because we are accessing this resource using anonymous authentication. So obviously authentication type and username will also be empty. Alright, so when I go ahead and click this button, the application reads that XML data into the data set and it displays that fine. Alright, very good. Now let's go ahead and see how to enable impersonation and what actually happens when we enable impersonation. So to turn impersonation on, all we have to do is within web.config file under system.web, I use this identity element, identity impersonate is equal to true. That's it. So we have turned impersonation on. We have enabled impersonation. Now let's go ahead and access this web form. We actually will get an error now. Look at that. An ASP.NET setting has been detected that does not apply in integrated managed pipeline mode. So what is this integrated managed pipeline mode and where is this present? So within IIS, okay, remember this web application 1 is executed using default app pool. How do I know that? Just right click on that, go to manage application advanced settings. So the application pool that is used is default app pool. So where is that default app pool? Go to application pools here and you should find the default app pool and look at, go to the basic settings of this one. And where can I find the basic settings? You can see that here, edit application pool, basic settings. Now look at the managed pipeline mode. It's integrated. And what does the error message say? ASP.NET setting has been detected that does not apply in integrated managed pipeline mode, which means we have changed that to classic. So when we enable impersonation, the managed pipeline mode must be classic. So I click OK. Now let's go ahead and refresh this page. Okay, so that error goes away. And look at the interesting fact here. Now the application code is actually executed using authority /iuser. So that's the account which was initially providing anonymous access to resources on the server. That's the account that IIS uses. Now, even when the request is handed over to ASP.NET, the same account is actually executing the application code as well. Okay, so why is this happening? Because you have enabled impersonation. You have turned the impersonation on. So because of that, the IIS account, the iUser account, is used to execute the application code. In fact, this is a very common interview question. Okay, when the application uses anonymous authentication and if impersonation is disabled, then the application pool identity is used to execute the application code. We have seen that. But if impersonation is enabled with anonymous authentication, then the iUser account is used to execute the application code. Okay, so the next very important question is when to use application pool identity over iUser USR. Many a times it's actually better to use application pool identity because we have discussed about what application pools are, what are the advantages of deploying applications to application pools, because they provide application isolation and better security. Okay, we discussed that in the previous sessions of this video series. So if you haven't watched them, I would strongly encourage you to do so. But then let's answer this question now. When to use application pool identity over iUSR to execute the application code? If there are two or more websites hosted on a machine with iUser as the anonymous account, then they can access each other's content. Let's say I have web application 1 and web application 2. Now, if you use iUSR as the anonymous account, if you enable impersonation, then iUSR account is going to be the one that executes the application code for both the applications. Now, for that account, you can when you set permissions, you can either set permissions to access a specific file or deny access to a specific file. When you deny access to a specific file for that account, then both of the applications will not be able to access. Similarly, if you grant access, then both of the applications will be able to access. Okay, so that's a security threat. Now, if there are two competitors and both of their websites are hosted on the same web server, now we do not want one competitor's website to come and access the contents that belong to another competitor. Okay, in that case, what we can do, we can actually deploy the application to different application pools. When we deploy the application to different application pools, each application pool has its own application pool identity. Now for competitor 1, let's say I have application 1 that is deployed to application pool 1, application 2 deployed to application pool 2. Okay, now I can deny access to application pool 1 identity to all the files that belong to application 2, and along the same lines I can do the same thing to application 1 as well. In this way, application pools provides us better security over files. In fact, we have discussed about how to do that in part 84 of this video series. Now let's actually see this point. If there are two or more websites hosted on a machine with iUser as the anonymous account, then they can access each other's content. How is that possible? Let's actually look at that. So I have web application 1 here. Now the impersonation is actually enabled for this web application 1. I have another web application here, which is the name is web application 2, but it's exactly similar to web application 1. So on web form 1 of this web application 2 is the same piece of code, and then within the button click the same piece of code again. So for this application at the moment, impersonation is not enabled. Let's go ahead and enable impersonation, and to do that, under system.web within web.config file, all we have to do is identity impersonate is equal to true. So we are enabling impersonation, and now this web application 2 advanced settings, and even this one is being executed using default app pool. Okay, and if you look at the default app pool, if we right click on default app pool, advanced settings, the identity is application pool identity, but since we have enabled impersonation but for both of these applications, they're going to use the IUSR account to execute the application code. So let's go ahead and run the application 2 as well. So now look at that, even application 2 is using IUSR account. I click this button, I'm able to access this file. Now both of the applications are able to access the file. Okay, let's say these two are competitors. Only web application 1 should be able to access that file, but web application 2 shouldn't be able to access. If I go ahead and deny access to IUSR account, what's going to happen? Both of the applications will not be able to access that. That's because of the fact they're using the same account to execute the application code. We will not have that problem when we deploy this application to different application pools, and then if we disable impersonation. Okay, so let's quickly check that. So I'm going to go to this file, go to the properties and security. I'm going to edit, click add. That's the name of the account. Check names. So that's going to be IUSR. Click OK, and I'm going to deny. So now if we refresh this, that's web application 2. I click this button and I get a security error, and similarly I click this button here. Look at that, I get the same error. Both of the applications are not able to access the file. But if we want to isolate each application's content, the applications can be deployed to different application pools, and the NTFS file permissions can be set for the respective application pool identity. In fact, we discussed about this in part 84, so please check that video session. On this slide, we have resources for ASP.NET C# and SQL Server interview questions. That's it for today. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.